Hi, I'm Philip Shepard, and I'm here with Ilan Stephani, whom I deeply and wondrously love for her clarity and her zest and her really profound insight. So we decided we would have some conversations together, and this is the first of them, and we'll see where it goes. And first, Elan, would you like to introduce yourself and your work, just so people have a sense of that?
Hmm. First of all, I'm intimidated by speaking with a native speaker. I always like,
Oh,
whoa, this is English. So I'm Berlin based. I'm a body worker, and I was deeply in in-person retreats before Corona hit all of us. And then I was jumping with the whole stuff to the internet as well. And I can try to introduce my work. And it's so difficult, and I don't want this to be a long part, but I feel obsessed with somatic research in order to truly get a sense in my own life and for as many people and nervous systems around of how amazing we are and how powerful and how much we are energies of such an amount of aliveness and gratitude and happiness, coming from a place where I study trauma in a collective and individual way, having a deep sense of kind of distant to where we are now. So also me quickly mentioning I was deeply in in-person retreats and now jumped with all of the stuff to the internet. To some extent, it's not a stuff. It's not a jump. It's me translating the individual nervous system trauma signature and the individual nervous system's needs around safety and understanding in order to heal. Translating that to the collective level. That's all. There is no difference. There's to some extent nothing new. We are just talking about the nervous system of mankind. And we are talking about the nervous system of the internet as a reflection of the nervous system of mankind. And this is especially where my research is focusing on at the moment, because I think we didn't tap into the treasure of this potential. And even though nobody might say I'm right, I still think I'm right. So I'm a researcher, and the more people laugh about me, the more I'm like, oh, I'm onto something. Woo!
yeah.
Because why? Why should somebody belittle me? Why should somebody laugh at my thesis if there is not something that would shake the grounds? And I'm all about shaking grounds, all
Yeah.
about shaking grounds, all breakthroughs in my healing, all breakthroughs out of desperation, numbness, chronic fatigue, whatever I went out of in my life came from shaking my grounds as brutally as possible. And before I allow you to speak as well, Philip, I just want to say that besides admitting that I somehow forced you to record that as well, no, I felt very attracted to your, I do not know so much about your content of teaching, but the way you teach embodies a rage and an urgency, and at the same time, in this urgency, a regulation within the amount of pain on a collective and individual level and global and ecological level that attracts me. There is something in this. This is about something. We are alive. We are burning. And this is something I'm all about, this kind of let's warm up again our passion for life. And this is something that made you, in my perception, remarkable, because I can compare you to so many others where it's all about a method or sharing or knowledge. And I think it's not about knowledge, it's about energy that makes us waking up, that provides us the grace of reawakening. It's both. It's shaking the grounds with brutality and radical love.
It's beautifully said.
Hmm.
Beautifully said. So for those who aren't familiar with my work, it's based on a lifetime of inquiry. I've written two books. New Self, New World was my first. Radical Wholeness is my second. And when people ask which book should I start with, I always suggest starting with Radical Wholeness, because it's an easier entree into the work. And what is my work? I love the way you talk about the necessity for brutality and the necessity for radical love, both at the same time. My work entirely conforms to that marriage of complementary opposites. The brutality in my work is really as clear and uncompromising a look at our culture and the ways in which our culture inhibits our responsiveness, deadens us to our reality. Eventually, our culture puts us in our heads so that the body is this sort of source of noise below the neck that we would do well to ignore until it starts screaming, and then we go to fix it. And our relationship with the body is such a top-down relationship, and that is the primary relationship in our lives, our relationship with our body. And so you look beyond the body at our relationships with the world around us, with our plans, with our lives, and it all comes back to the prototype of our relationship with the body. All we know is this top-down relationship that obscures sensation and patterns our responses. And so we wonder, why do we feel alienated? Why do we feel estranged? Why do we feel disconnected? Well, because fundamentally we have disconnected with our own bodies, and the body processes more than 1 billion times more information than we can be consciously aware of. And you can never, it's folly to think you can somehow objectively know all that information. It's impossible. You just can't. But you can feel it. You can feel your body's responsiveness to the world. And what happens as we begin to disencumber the body of those stifled patterns is that its energy is able to come into coherence. Because the way we live in this top-down modality, we are shattered. We can be rational, we can think with the head, or we can feel from the heart, but it's either or. It's a binary, this or that. They don't go together. How can you feel from the heart and be analytical at the same time? In our culture, we don't do that. We don't feel a gut instinct in accord with the heart. We don't feel the intelligence of the legs in union with the intelligence of the head. It's compartmentalized and shattered. And so to unlock our bodies is to at the same time release those compartmentalized sources of intelligence into union, into a dance where they cohere into wholeness. And when you surrender bit by bit to your experience of wholeness, you open your eyes on the world and you feel its wholeness. And there is no separation between the two. Your wholeness is held by the world's. And then you feel the guidance of the world. And that's where the joy is. That's how we can move forward, is if we begin to harmonize with the world around us and heed its guidance in a state of humility. And I really think, the word humility shares the same root as the word human. And there's something very important in there. And the same root is shared with the word humus, which means earth. So earth, humility, and human, they come back to the same root. And we have for thousands of years believed in our own arrogance that we are separate, that we are superior. that we are entitled to dominate. And it's the way we dominate the body. It's that same impulse that we carry over to the world around us. So, sorry, this is longer than I was expecting, but my work is, I've developed practices, and there are over 100 of them, and each practice is a way of encountering a limitation within the body's neurology and feeling it and softening into it so that the limitation turns into a choice. So it's never, you should feel this. It's more, do you have the choice? Or is it, are you depriving yourself of choice, which is what happens with the enculturation of the body by the society in which we live. And there's a gentleness and a simplicity to all of my practices. And that's, when you speak of the necessity for safety, it's just that. It's just, the body is mostly water. Can you begin to feel it as a fluid medium? And because the body is fluid, each breath is a wave that travels through the whole of it. You can feel the wave descend to the soles of your feet, to the top of the head, to your fingertips. And you begin to come into an accommodation of all the diverse and wondrous and charged attunements that the body is capable of. I've got a metaphor for the body. Can I share my metaphor with you?
Yes.
So,
it's the ocean.
Different. I think the body is primarily a resonator. So I think the body is like a bell, and I'm pulling out a bell because I have this gorgeous bell, and when the body attunes to the present and to the world, it rings, and you feel that. And what makes that resonance possible is the space inside the bell. And in our culture, what we've done is we've stuffed that spaciousness full of anxieties and stress and tension and expectation. So the present, it's still going like this the whole time, but we don't feel it. All we feel is the self. So it's like our attention goes into this black hole of self-consciousness and tries to win and tries to succeed. So if we can gently integrate and release those bound energies, then once again, we discover the world that holds us in every moment.
It's still such a beautiful metaphor for such a sad story. I mean, at least the first part of the story.
Yeah.
And then it's pretty glamorous what you put inside of the resonator. I mean, it's like, okay, it's a metaphor. To be honest, it's merely, it is so painful, so much suffering. Yes. But the second part of the book has a happy end. I got it. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. What I love so much about many things. So I won't be the one, hopefully, to decide where to go from the richness that you share. But there is something of, I developed 100 practices in order to remember the own design of being a resonator and being walking presence. And I love that to some extent the richness is an overabundance or might be overwhelming when somebody is listening to you, and at the same time there are practices. And I think this is incredibly important because we bath in so much information and wisdom around, especially in the era of the internet. We can quote the Dalai Lama and the biggest teachings of Buddhism and mysticism, etc., and we do not have a path towards that. And by that lack, we do not have access to, they are talking about me.
Yeah.
They are talking about me. And this is something that where I think the structure of, let's say, 100 practices, which is not so much. I mean, 100 cheeseburgers, 100 practices. Come on, it's not so much. There is a structure from the outer world, leading me deeper, inviting me deeper, falling in love again with my inner world, adding a path of energy to all the information that we accumulated. And if there is only information and we are burnt out / without energy, we are still this resonator being full with another kind of material. That's the same. We are stuck in, oh, I'm not the body. And one of the biggest things that I would love to point out to us, like, yay, we are not the body. Why are we so happy about being not the body? We cannot feel ourselves, because the moment we feel ourselves, first of all, we recognize that it's full of pain underneath the numbness, and second of all, that we hate ourselves. And our self-hate, or our global collective self-hatred, I think, is directly mirrored in how we destroy this planet. We wouldn't do that if we would be egoistic in a wonderful term, if we would be arrogant in a way of truly believing in us. We would have this earth being paradise because it is, and because we would embody that we deserve a happy life. And by us destroying the environment, it comes exactly from self-hatred and the confusion. Self-hatred should be self-love or egoism, where I'm like, no, I won't call this egoism. I call it immaturity, stupidity, and collective trauma. I mean, there is no glamour in burning the earth. It's no glamour. Every idiot can die. And every idiot will die. What do we want to prove?
And I think we are driven. There's that element of self-hatred, and to me there are layers to that. One of those layers is a mistrust, a demeaning, a demonizing of what is female. Material, the word material comes from a Latin word that means mother. And the material world is there to exploit. And the material body is there to dominate and to control and to fix when it goes wrong. And I really feel an intelligence in the body, and I feel that intelligence centered in the pelvic bowl. And it is like a complementary pole to the intelligence in the head. And these poles long for each other. They long to come into relationship, but our cultural fear of the female, which is millennia old, it's not a new thing. It goes back to the Neolithic Revolution. And what's happened is, well, maybe I'll trace that out just a little bit. In the Neolithic Revolution, we discovered agriculture and domesticated animals and built permanent settlements. So there's a transition from hunting gathering, in which you just notice the world and feel it and attune to it and are guided by it, to agriculture, where you move into a position of control. And the moment you take a seed for the first time and push it into the ground, everything changes. So suddenly, this bit of ground belongs to you. You have ownership of the earth, of this bit of earth, which is sort of insane. And then
and it owes you something. It has to give you something. Instead of, I'm giving you your existence all the time. Kind of, sorry for interrupting, but how ridiculous it is. Yeah.
There's that separation, and then the little plant growing up beside yours, it's now a weed and it has to be killed. And the little animal coming along is now vermin, and it has to be killed because it might eat your plant. And the tree growing beside your plant has to be cut down because it's putting your little plant in shade, and everything changes. And what happened with the Neolithic Revolution in the late Paleolithic, we, you know, the human experience was one that experienced the center of thinking in the belly. And you can see that in the art. You can see that in sort of Proto-Indo-European roots of language. You know, there are some burial sites where there is a stone placed at the navel. And then you think, oh, right, we have a headstone. We mark the head, that's our center. They have a navel stone. They mark the belly center. And what happened? There were all these deep cultural changes where we turned away from the goddess who was immanent in all things. I mean, a blade of grass was a manifestation of the goddess, a tree was. And we turned our allegiance to the god. And we left the mother. Culture was gathered around the mother, of course it was. But then somehow we moved towards the father and considered the father to be the center of the family. And at the same time, we moved away from the earth, and our attention went to the sky instead. And all of those things happened as our center of awareness left the pelvic bowl, left the belly, and began to rise through the body. So there's a period. Homer, the language Homer used was old, and I think he was writing around 800 BC. There's a word he uses over and over, phrene, P-H-R-E-N in English. And phrene, I mean, it turns up in English phrenology. For example, I don't know if you know phrenology, but it's you it's a somewhat discredited science because it would measure your head, take various measurements, and tell you what your personality was according. I mean, it's absurd, but phrene, the Greek word phrene meant mind, and it also meant diaphragm. Because they experienced their thinking, their mind in the diaphragm. And there's one translator of Homer, Richmond Lattimore, who preserves that sense. So once in a while, he'll have a character say, "The mind within my breast understands your words." And then from Homer, you know, the center of our awareness rose up to the head. By Plato's day, we were in our heads. And there's a dialogue that Plato wrote called Timaeus, in which this very wise man was asked, tell me, how did the gods make us? And Timaeus responded, well, first they fashioned this divine sphere based on the orbs of the heaven. And then they realized that it wouldn't be able to get around. So they grew it a vehicle, arms and legs and a torso. So there we are. I think that's maybe 350 BC. And Plato is talking about the body as a vehicle and the head as the divinest part of us. And his audience was rapt because they recognized the truth of what he said. So this is an old story. And for me, you know, that turning away from the female shows up in the body as a dissociation from our being. And when you dissociate from your being, you leave an emptiness there. And no amount of consumerism can fill it. And we are an addictive society, whether it's gambling or shopping or sex or whatever it might be. We are trying to fill this emptiness within. And it can't be done, not with any of those things.
And since we are somehow, I think, born in this innate aliveness, no matter what, to some extent, you call it old. And yes, it's old. I mean, a few thousand years with a few billion of living beings suffering in that, dying in that. It's kind of a heritage. I mean, that's a collective trauma. Let's call that a collective trauma for sure. And at the same time, Philip, it's not so old. We are mammals.
Well,
We are designed, we have been designed for billions and billions of years. So to some extent, there is something underneath, the even deeper, the even more solidly grounded information in our nervous system is another story, is perfect equilibrium, is perfect regulation, is perfect being nourished by the outer world, and at the same time, being a living gift to the outer world. So to some extent, like just a footnote, because otherwise my, sorry to say, head might be exploding. Who talks about the head, Brian? So sorry, I'm a little bit 80s. But you talk about the body as a resonator, and yes, and maybe even more, that this vastness, this emptiness of me, being this resonance with a presence around, can also be described as a richness that I add to existence, as an energy regulation in a way of me moving through a field of war, through a field of trauma. It's not me being the shadow and being the victim and being the burnt out woman, but it's about me drinking the poison, resonating with the poison, and realigning more than just my own nervous system. End of the footnote. Wow, for now. But
just to add, sorry, it's so beautifully said, and I completely agree. And as you regulate your nervous system in that way, you are helping the world. It affects everything around you.
We cannot stop us being contributors into whatever direction. Every cheeseburger, nothing against cheeseburgers, and they might be vegan and whatever. Everything contributes something. Yeah. So we highly, even as the species that overestimate their own power, etc., we underestimate ourselves.
Yeah.
We are addicted to underestimating ourselves. Our comfort zone is not, we are the boss. Nobody believes in the boss. Steve Jobs said, I never wanted to be the richest man on the graveyard. And he is the richest man on the graveyard, in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Where is he? Back in Earth. So there is something of us being designed for the tantric path of incarnating, being incarnated anyway. And the most incarnated ones might end up as the most dissociated ones because they couldn't endure and tolerate what was put onto them. I'm a very good example. I mean, I know pretty much everything about dissociation on a ongoing 24/7 level and on a level during shock trauma. So there is something of the precision why we dissociate and where we dissociate tells us another story than us just being numb. We are deeply shocked. So at the end of the day, we are those tantric beings being in resonance with the outer world, no matter what. You can describe it as well on this level or in those terms. And then we are following the path of energy anyway. So when I listen to you and just like, let's say, could be some kind of observer or just listener or interviewee for you, I would say, Philip, do I have to sacrifice my privilege as being head dominated and being westernized and being, there is something of us, okay, I get it. I'm numbed out, I'm missing fun in life, so I have to deal with my body. Okay, I have to save the climate just because otherwise, my children will not grow up, okay. And it's not about that. We do not surrender to the feminine again, to the female again. I do not know the precise wording because I do not want to talk about women and men at the moment, of course.
No.
But yeah, just correct me. I will say female just because you used the term, and I hope that people just get along with my language. So we do not surrender to the female again because we do not get that the only party that we can ever long for can only start there. We do not surrender to our body. We do not surrender to our sensation because we think it's weak. So there is a brutal kind of, I mean, different people, different stories. You can add your story. There is in my story of being reawakened to the love and the grace and the power of embodiment. It came with the deepest night of my soul and with such an amount of humiliation. So the first thing is not, oh, let's sense our sensations and everything is awake again. The first thing is, I fucking stop thinking. I fucking stop my fucking arrogance because I want to kill myself while I'm in my mid-20s. And I go from there. Do you know where I go? Not into the sensational party in my nervous system. I go into numbness. I go into the path underneath. That is something that we have to cross. And there is not enough teaching on that for so many people who are on this path. They go into the numbness and there they feel, I'm an idiot, I'm doing everything wrong, my whole life explodes, I want to kill myself, I hate myself, I cannot endure that. And we need guidance through this layer. We need guidance through those fields of trauma. We think trauma is an individual exception. It's not, and I would be happy if it would. It's not. It's bloody real. And you tap into that the moment that you try to reawaken, that you try to kiss the female again. What you might find is something like a corpse, and you will keep kissing it, or otherwise it has no reason for talking with you. There is something where this tells you at the end of the story, you human, you have been right. You are the most divine being on this earth. And the price that you pay for that is you are the biggest idiot. You do not deserve anything here. We do not owe you anything. And your bow has to be the deepest. And so, like us recognizing what we are running around with, living God is living God all the time, it's true. But we do not believe that. We are just saying that. And the only way of us embodying that this is true and realizing that this has always been true and always will be true is us handing ourselves over with everything. Every pride has to die. You get access to it, but you will be so naked even without your skin. Your last glamorous self-image, sacrifice. This is what we have to sacrifice. There is a sacrifice for us reawakening to the individual pleasure of embodiment and the collective pleasure of, having an awesome life on an awesome planet. That's the basic design we are sitting on at the moment. And there is a sacrifice, but it's not the sacrifice of the fun, it's the sacrifice of the suffering. And it's realizing that we are the ones having chosen the suffering. And if I then go into, oh my God, I'm such an idiot, I chose suffering. Yes, you are an idiot, and don't waste your time with self-hatred or self-blame. It's just a waste of time. It won't lead you anywhere. So to me, I didn't mention that in the very first moment when you were like inviting me to share a few moments about my work, but there is a sense of mysticism and spirituality that I defend when I'm talking about my soles of my feet, about bowing to a plant. There is something where this use of spirituality or mysticism or awe and wonder is really more than a mindfuck. It's really more. Yeah. So that's basically me somehow doing research, feeling you in this research, so many people in this research around how do we manage the killing fields where things around what we talk about stop being words. Unfortunately, we wanted to flirt with transformation, and now it got real. And you will hope that it never started. You will hope that Philip was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, there cannot be transformation without death.
Yeah.
What was dies to make room for what is.
And again, I'm so fast in saying yeah, and I'm just here.
Yeah.
until my next death scares me to death. It's so real. It's so real. What our cells remember around violation is so real. The female doesn't die because it's weak. It didn't die, but that's another story. It will feel like dead because that is numbness, feels like deadness. And I think the nervous system knows the difference between spiritual vastness. I think at the moment, most people dissociate into their normal kind of dissociation and call it spiritual vastness. Yes, the emptiness is here. That was why meditation was so easy for me all the time, because the emptiness from the Neo-Advaita satsang scene, I'm like, I'm living there all the time. I mean, of course, I'm nobody. I know I'm a piece of shit. So you're so polite, Philip. You offer me that. I say we had internet problems. That's not true. I had internet problems. I mean, let's face it. I'm okay with that. It's just another possibility for growth. I was talking about humility. So that is, here we go. It was Ilan. Okay, yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I could pick up that thread or that track that I was onto, or that we were onto before the interruption with the internet, which is so much about really my passion. Let's call it my passion, but also me. I feel so warned around if we tap into embodiment and our innate sensitivity, we have to face in the most real sense and sensation what has happened to us on a collective level. And there is no way of getting away with, oh, my parents loved me. Yes, there are awesome parents on earth. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't, as the resonator, also get all those highly traumatized frequencies from the outer world as well. And that is, it's not a word. It's not talking. It's not chic. It's no blah blah, and it's no fashion. You need proteins, you need stability, you need friends, you need obsession, you need courage, you need desperation, you need a good tool set. You need things, because otherwise you will just run with all of the energy again against yourself. That is the basic part of conditioning. Do not listen to your instincts. And our instincts are not like, okay, so they do not want to listen to us. They fought like crazy for our life. I mean, yes, we are wired out of survival. So our instincts really tried to stay on track. It just wasn't possible with the amount of taboo, etc., panic, shock around. So it was me saying, okay, yeah, female, and then female sounds a little bit like, more like women, more like, no. Oh, whoa. This is the thing that makes you die like that without even noticing. It's just a gram of nerve endings in your spine and you're gone. So easy. Oops. There is something of this. It's interesting because we once had a not recorded conversation where I was like, oh no, I think it was recorded. I do not know exactly, about laughing at things or not taking things serious. Why? Because they scare us. Yeah. We have to stay the ones who laugh. We have to stay the ones who have the body, the hobby of embodiment, the hobby of body work. But the moment that this becomes more and more a thing with real energy, it will eat you up. It's not a hobby. And it's so wise and intelligent and powerful, and the most loving mother and the most loving love that you can ever long for. So you do not want it to change while you want it to change. And my words around that come mainly from, let's create a culture where people can get through this process with as much safety and support as possibly possible. just because otherwise everybody agrees in terms of embodiment and is so happy about staying with a safe distance. So I really, really want to create. And that is why I also, sorry for my many words, Philip, you invite me and then but I'm so happy about your super structured way of, I counted them, like a little bit more than 100 things that work. In terms of getting through the layer of numbness, we need the tool set. We need the tool set. We need a tool set. And then we are a 24/7 transformation, so much more alive than ever before. And we are a 24/7 contribution into a direction that I truly think is sexy for the first time in 6,000 years.
I think so too.
The two of us agree. You have the tool sets, great. Ilan talks, Philip has a tool set, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so much in what you said that I'd love to respond to. You know, that very dark place that you're pulled into. What's wrong with me? Why am I an idiot? You know, when I'm working with people, I say over and over, there's nothing wrong with you. There's so much that is wrong with our culture. And you are a product of that culture, and your neurology is patterned to disconnect. That's what our instruction manual has told us that we've been given by our culture. And that, you know, that sense of disconnection runs so deeply, it's so rampant that we stop seeing it. And we, you know, we feel the self in here and the world out there. And there is no such thing as that boundary that separates us from the world. And so the only way we can feel a boundary that doesn't exist is by desensitizing ourselves. So we numb ourselves, we dull ourselves to the world and contract into this busyness of the head that is thinking. And because we've contracted into the head, we open to a certain kind of information and close the door on another kind of information. So I think one of the reasons that we are so avid to keep up with the news, to keep up with Facebook and Tinder and whatever it might be, is that we are essentially starved for information, because every moment of the present teems with more information than you could possibly encompass. The world is alive with presence and transformation and currents. Everything that happens in the universe passes through your body. You feel it all. And I think what happens, I know this happened for me, we develop sensitivities. No one can develop every sensitivity. There are too many sensitivities even to name. You know, a sensitivity to music, a sensitivity to color, a sensitivity to someone's heartbeat. But when our life depends on it, the sensitivity awakens. And from personal experience, when I was a teenager, I was traveling by bicycle through Europe and the Middle East and India and Japan. And there was this moment, you know, as the sun was lowering to the horizon, where I had to find a place to sleep in a country I'd never been to before. around a corner I'd never seen before. And every single night I was guided, and it was such a tangible sense of being guided to a place where I could safely spend the night. And I slept undisturbed every single night along that journey. And so that my life depended on finding a place to sleep in Syria, in India, in Iraq, wherever it might have been. And I sensitized to it. There's a young man I've read about who was born blind, and he learned to echolocate. He makes a little clicking sound with his tongue, and he can ride a bicycle down a street, and he knows where the curb is. He knows that's a fire hydrant. He knows he echolocates. Again, his life depended on this sensitivity. And I think if only we could awaken to the realization that on a personal level, your life depends on your sensitivity to the present. And on a communal level, that our continuing life as a culture depends on our sensitivity to the world, to nature in which we are embedded, then we could begin to harmonize rather than seeking to control. And I think control and harmony are desperately confused in our culture. I think they are opposites. Control has to do with a set of ideas that you impose to systematize something. Harmony is a quality in which every part of an organic whole responds to and yields to every other part. So there's nothing that is resisting the reality of the moment. And my God, if we could begin to harmonize with the world rather than seeking to exploit it, everything would change. But I don't think that's possible until we come back to the body. Because as long as we sit separate from it, we will seek to control it. And as you say, the humility that brings you back to this thrumming intelligence that is coupled with the world's intelligence. I don't have any real sense that I am thinking alone. I am thinking with all of this. My thinking is informed by, sustained by a field, a mindful field that holds the world, the universe in its embrace. And as long as I dissociate from the body, I desensitize myself to that field. And, if you want a real information feed, drop down into the body and find a still point within it and just receive all that is happening in the body, through the world. There's more information there than you could possibly process. I think, we only find the present insufficient when we are insufficiently present.
It's so wonderful that how you portray your thinking and your felt sense experience of being a thinking being, because in the beginning of the conversation you talked about like the head and the heart, and there is like no coherence. And yes, at the moment what we define as our mind is a trauma symptom. It's not a mind, it's a trauma symptom. But in the end, again, we are right. We are highly intelligent, but our intelligence can only reawaken also in our awesome mind when it somehow dies around every definition and orientation that it has learned. It's like our basic orientation in the world is based on friction. It's based on disharmony. And harmony is such a great example, because for me, being in harmony and in coherence with everything around, my conditioned little girl says, shrink, listen to everything else. Oh, there is a bug. Oh, there is a man. Oh, there is a window. Oh, let's be in coherence, in harmony. That is called collapse. It's the opposite of harmony. It is me creating suffering by shutting down even more. So for harmony, I have to live up to my too muchness, my intensity, to everything that I am. And at the end of the day, our challenge is stopping underestimating ourselves. I mean, we are strong and we are powerful. So harmony, I agree so much around harmony being such a twisted term. It's almost practical that culture twisted harmony or misunderstood harmony in such a thorough way that we can say it's just 180-degree different from what you think it is. Volume up, show up, glow as crazy, because you are a glowing living being, and existence is waiting for you, and suffering and shutting down doesn't save anybody, not you and not anybody around. So there is something of this, yes, harmony, and at the same time, let's be cautious with the word, the information, without the energy that needs to be realigned with the wording in the moment of the wording, because otherwise we're like, oh yeah, harmony. And then I'm like, no, not this harmony. That's a problem. We want to go towards a solution. Just 180-degree the other way around. And the other thing is, when your life depends on that, you do not need a process. You do not need trauma therapy. You do not need a tool set. It's just here. And I know about Greta Thunberg standing there in front of the most powerful politicians of the world saying, my name is Greta Thunberg, and I want you to panic. Yes. And that's it. There is something of embodiment. Yes, it's titration, and yes, it's trauma therapy, and yes, it's a lot of safety and comfort and a lot of tissues. Yes. And no. This is also a jump into panic. And another shocking moment was for me that once, I think in a spiritual setting, somebody quoted somebody else around meditate as if the gun would be on your head. And the teacher was interrupting him saying, the gun is on your head. So it's not that dissociation creates boundary. It creates the illusion of boundary.
Yes.
There is no boundary. There is no boundary. So it's like us, we are all one. Oh, beware. What are you talking here about? We are all one. Yeah. There is no starving child in Africa. It doesn't exist. You are already starved. So beware which kind of quote you share on Facebook. It's not so sexy. So there is something of us, and I remember just from my own experience, not going into detail, but I experienced, and it taught me so much. I spent hours in a complete shutdown in my nervous system, in a traumatic situation, like just complete. And the perfection of this biological happening is insane. I can't describe the perfection. I was there like, am I dissociated right now? It was brilliant. The amount, the perfection of illusion was perfect. It was just perfectionized over billions of years. And it happened in the most horrific situation of my whole life. So there is something of me really knowing that this kind of woo, love and light might be the doorway to hell. It might be happening because hell is happening right now, and because our instincts know. They wouldn't dissociate if they wouldn't know. So I'm so sorry, like you quickly shared with me about your story, like not being able to digest culture and breaking free very early. And I envy you for that. I think I'm always a little bit like the advocate for the shadow and the trauma stuff, just because I know, whoa, this needs your warrior qualities 1000% every day. And I mean, not for everybody, just because every individual has an individually beautiful and individually challenging path back into embodiment. But I do not want to miss a chance to say, I want to warn you, and you will never regret bowing again to your instincts, but be warned. And ask for support and ask for tool sets. They are around, and we have to create a culture that takes this thing, embodiment, serious. And it's not about, I want to contribute something to saving the planet. It's not even about climate change. It's about this gun being on your head. You can be the most egoistic asshole in the world. Just be desperate and be strong.
And the gun is there. The gun is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
are, we all live under a death sentence. I mean, that is the, you know, the sword hanging above the head that pulls the world into focus, that gives this moment its richness, its transient beauty.
Yes. And it's presence that in the first moment might be just a fear-induced presence.
Yeah.
You just get present because your instincts guide you the way. There is no safety without presence. So when we tap back into the guidance of our instincts and our nervous system, and I truly want to spend at least 100 more conversations with you around the outer world guiding us, because I agree, this hell around guides us into grace, into love, into healing. So I want to really spend as many words with you as possible on that, because I think the co-created field of a culture knowing this and exploring this depends on people talking about it, because language isn't empty, isn't fully empty. It builds a web, it builds a field. I want to build together with you another part of this field, because I do not hear enough people talking about the grace of hell leading us the way, or the grace of trauma. The grace of trauma embodying the solution within all the time. So I want to explore that with more words and more clarity. Coming back to something that I forgot now. The fear-induced presence. If we tap back into our instincts and learn to differentiate between our conditioned kind of collapse, which feels like self-love and comfort zone, etc., and our instincts leading us, they lead us into the only safety that is truly here for us. And that is full rage, full energy, nothing, holding nothing back, full embodiment, full self-love, full forgiveness, radical self-forgiveness, radical forgiveness with everything around, radical freedom. Our instincts know the way. Our instincts know the way.
I just know that to be so deeply true for myself. I've often said, rage saved my life. And
how could it be different? You are a tiger. How could it be different?
Yeah.
6,000 years are nothing. And not they are only nothing. They obviously didn't work, because it doesn't save our life.
Yeah.
So we have a dysfunctional plan B, being ridiculously young. Just an invention of privileged people.
Yeah.
Being traumatized because they lost the female.
Yeah.
That's the competition.
Yeah, and for me, maybe just in closing, for me that loss of the female, and I'm so glad, nothing to do with men and women, male and female. It is the complementary union of tension within each of us that ushers us into wholeness. The female element within me, the male element within me, they're either suffering through a divorce, or they are in a marriage of respect and appreciation. And I think that the divorce from the female shows up most clearly in this wound that our culture inflicts on us deliberately, systematically, which is the wound that separates our thinking from our being. So we are trained. You think of getting a little 5-year-old child and having that child for 12 years in the public school system, where the body is to be suppressed, the body's energy is to be suppressed. Well, there's no difference between the body's energy and the body's intelligence. So you demean that. If you don't suppress the body's intelligence, the body's energy, you get in trouble. You get sent to the office. You're shamed. And meanwhile, you're to fill your head with the right ideas, and then you're rewarded when you do. And what happens is we actually come to believe that we can think more clearly by segregating our thinking into the head and stifling our awareness of this energy teeming below the neck. And you think about that, and how could it be possible that we could think more clearly with a fragment of our intelligence than we can with the whole of our being? It just doesn't make any sense. But that's the model into which we've been ushered. And so we struggle within ourselves. I mean, that's the ultimate hell, is the divided self that is suffering through this warfare, where we're living with a prohibition against the surrender that brings us into that realm of being where we not only feel the parts of the self soften and come into community, but we feel the self coming into community with the world around us.
The Vedic literature, the Vedic texts, describe 7 stages of hell. And the deepest, most hellish hell is the world of technical perfection.
That reminds me right away of a quote from Joseph Campbell, because Joseph Campbell talked about the call, where the world whispers to you and you know what you have to do. And he said, and then you have a choice. You can answer the call, or you can turn your back on it. And he said that if you turn your back on it, you retreat to a world of organized inadequacy. Gorgeous phrase. Organized inadequacy. That is our life in this culture. That is what we settle for.
I just quickly want to have that recorded, because as a footnote for another conversation, if you're open for that, because you touched on that during the last minutes. I think in the split that you described in the last minutes, we cannot see where the solution that is truly the solution comes from. We cannot see its form. We lost the idea or the concept or the sense, the sensitivity for the design of a true solution, because we are trained that the solution is what is right for the teacher. I mean, there is a question, I have the answer, and that's right. So the moment we tap into the path of a true solution on the global and individual level, it will feel like not knowing. It will feel like tapping into the energy of the question and embodying the question and staying present with the question in an embodied way, in a super concrete, real way. And I would love us to talk more about that, because I think us contributing the solution by us embodying the walking question that we are anyway, let's say the walking not knowing, is so much smarter on a directly felt sense level as well than a solution of a quick fix, another quick fix. Great idea. And it will feel like disorganization. Like when you say organized inadequacy, yes, what's the alternative? 180 degrees around is not, let's go into the organized adequacy. It's going into brutal chaos. Be prepared.
Yeah.
You will have no idea what's happening to you. You will have no idea what you did wrong. You just know that you have to keep going, and you will keep going. And nobody around will applaud. Nobody around will love you for that. Nobody around will understand, and you keep going. It's a very lonely path in times. So there is something of the chaos. Be prepared for the insane precision of the chaos that is waiting for you inside of you if you tap into your nervous system. Be prepared. And there is an instinct that the chaos is the true organization, or the beginning of the cosmic kiss and dance and love and pleasure and ecstasy. You starting seeing that shimmering in yourself as being yourself. But it feels, it's rough if you're not prepared. So I see somehow those words or conversations also as a kind of soft transitioning. Like if there is a river, and I do not know the word for what are the words on both sides of a river? How do you call that?
Riverbank.
Yeah, the riverbank. Let's make the riverbank as soft as possible, as lovingly handing over to the stream inside of all of us as possible.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, describing as many things around the path or the river that might come across somebody as possible. And then people are prepared by other people sharing and sharing and sharing. And all of this is just the riverbank. And then they can rest, because they are nourished with so many stories that they will add their own ones, which will be of incredible value to all of us.
And then we are all living the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
traveling down the river.
Yeah. And I love that quest. You know, Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's quest. And quest is what it comes back to question. You know, the word is embedded in question. It's the question. And we're so conditioned as a culture to want the answer. I mean, you know, back to the school system, the questions don't matter. It's the answers that matter. We do nothing to teach our children how to question. And the skill of posing a question is so much more sophisticated than the skill of coming up with an answer. And I think as a society, when we lose the ability to question, we so easily latch on to answers that feel right, whether those answers are provided by politicians or populists or whatever it might be. We have lots to talk about, Ilan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still
And
look
I
forward.
think one last thing, Philip, that I like feel and appreciate, and I want to give words to that just because I feel this kind of witnessing that's just happening in myself when I give words to that, and then by you being part of this conversation, and then maybe by other people receiving this conversation, is it's the end of talking about when we add the layer of co-created energetic fields, and all conversations, even small talks, add energetic fields to the cosmos of language, which is potentially intelligent and potentially healing. So I want to explore a cultivation of language, if you're open for that, with you as well, because it is happening in my perception all the time of this is not adding another smart comment onto something that somebody else should be doing somewhere because we are running out of time. These are two children being scared of dying for the wrong reasons. And that's all that we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. And we cannot evolve into a new way of being and a new way of thinking without changing our language. Can't happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank
you
Ilan.
for your work, your courage to live this way, your 100 methods. I want to learn all of them. I will practice them like crazy. Some kind of stuff around that could be useful for that. Yes.
It's just, it's such a joy to play with you and explore with you and feel your presence in this way. It really is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings to the tiger in you, the nervous system in all of us. The rage.
I bow to the tiger in you.
Yes, sacred rage.
Yeah. All the best.
Bye.